morning, everybody. We're glad that you decided to be back with us again for week number 5 of our study in Ecclesiastes. I hope that you guys have been enjoying it up to this point. We have got tonight and then next week, and then we'll actually be done with this series. It actually went by pretty quickly, but I hope that you guys have enjoyed it and been able to get something from each of these lessons. I know I absolutely have. So tonight we are going to be doing Ecclesiastes chapters 8 and 9, and then the first part of chapter 10. So again, like last week, we're squeezing in a lot at one time, so you might see me going kind of quickly trying to get us through all this so I don't go over that 30-minute mark that I'm really trying to stay under. So as we get into chapter 8, we see King Solomon again talking about wise men and wise rulers. And in this particular section of the chapter, he's getting into us showing respect to those that are in authority over us, regardless of whether they are wise, regardless of whether they are godly. You know, there's still ways for us to show respect for them. And this is kind of what he's dealing with in this section of chapter 8. So I'm going to read the first 9 verses really quickly. It says, "Who is as the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face to shine, and the boldness of his face shall be changed. I counsel you to keep the king's commandment, and that in regard of the oath of God. Be not hasty to go out of his sight, stand not in an evil thing, for he does whatsoever pleases him. Where the word of a king is, there is power, and who may say unto him, What do you? Whoso keeps the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerns both time and judgment. Because to every purpose there is time and judgment, therefore the misery of man is great upon him. For he knows not that which shall be, for who can tell him when it shall be? There is no man that has power over the spirit to retain the spirit. Neither has he power in the day of death, and there is no discharge in that war. Neither shall wickedness deliver those who are given to it. All this have I seen, and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man rules over another to his own hurt." So, as I said, as we're getting into this, we see King Solomon encouraging respect for those in authority. And, you know, the thing about this is one of the things that he brings up is showing respect to authority when authority angers us. So specifically in verse 3, we saw he said, "Be not hasty to go out of his sight. Stand not in an evil thing, for he does whatsoever pleases him." So basically, this is him telling us, hey, you know, there are going to be times when those that are in authority over you are giving you rules that don't make sense. They're doing things that aren't fair to you. You know, you're being treated unfairly. You're being treated unjustly by the person that has been placed in authority over you. And basically the point he's trying to make here is that it is important, especially for us as Christians who are supposed to have this godly testimony about us, it is important that we respond to that wisely, that we don't just get angry and turn around and walk away, that we don't just run off at the mouth and start giving them back exactly what they gave us, but that we keep our spirit calm, and that during those times when that person has angered us or is treating us unjustly, that we are able to keep our testimony about us. That's, you know, one of the phrases I use all the time. I say, got to keep your testimony. People are watching us, right? And so this is one of the things that he's making a point about. And no doubt, as you know, as a king here, you know, Solomon, I'm sure, has seen people try to mistreat him. He's probably had people accuse him of mistreating them as well, and he's probably seen this over and over. And the point here that he is making is, especially if you claim to know the Lord, then when those that are in authority over you are coming against you or doing things that are not fair, it's very important that we are careful about the way that we respond to that. And one of the things that he also brings up that I think is actually really interesting, because of course, we know he is king, right? Solomon was king. He was the wisest king. He was incredibly wealthy, incredibly wise, incredibly knowledgeable, very well known. We've talked, we've read a few verses about how people would come from all around just to see him and hear him speak because he had so much knowledge. But one of the things that he points out in verse 8 is, there is no man that has power over the spirit to retain the spirit. Neither has he power in the day of death. And this is actually him pointing out, which I love that it's coming from him. This is coming from a very wise and powerful king. He's making the point here that even the mightiest king, even the most powerful and the wealthiest and the wisest king has his limitations, because as he always brings up, he is under the sun, right? He only has so much power down here. He can't control the spirit. He has no control over the spirit world. He has no control over death. These are things he can't control, and he is acknowledging that here, that even those that are in the highest positions of authority, their authority at the end of the day is limited, because unlimited authority belongs to God and God alone. So this is a point that he brings out here. And of course, we see in verse 9 where he said, "All this have I seen, and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There's a time wherein one man rules over another to his own hurt." And this is actually Solomon making mention of the fact that he looks at the way other kings rule. He sees the way that other kings maybe sometimes mistreat the people under them, or the way they do things unjustly or unfairly, and how it hurts the people that they're in charge of. And like any wise ruler, he uses that to his advantage. He learns from the mistakes of others. This is something, of course, that we do, especially, with our kids. I always tell Scarlett and Savannah, when you see somebody around you make a mistake, first of all, pray for them. Don't judge them, pray for them. But the big thing is learn from other people's mistakes. When you see somebody else doing it the wrong way, and you see what it cost them, and you see the damage, learn from what those other people have messed up. And this is exactly what he's saying here, that he did watching other kings as they ruled. He would see them doing things wrong, and he would use it to his advantage, and he would use it as a life lesson and a time of learning. So as we move into verses 10 through 17, he gets into a discussion of the death of the wicked. And this is something, again, that he's already talked about several times. And I keep saying y'all are going to see this a lot, where he goes in a lot of circles. He circles back to a lot of things over and over, these things that are sincerely important to him. So really quickly, I'm going to read 10 through 17. It says, "And so I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of the holy, and they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. This is also vanity. Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them who fear God, which fear before him. But it shall not be well with the wicked, neither shall he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he fears not before God. There is a vanity which is done upon the earth, that there be just men unto whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. Again, there be wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. Then I commended mirth, because a man has no better thing under the sun than to eat and to drink and to be merry. For that shall abide with him of his labor the days of his life which God gives him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to see the business that is done upon the earth, for also there is that neither day nor night sees sleep with his eyes. Then I beheld all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. Because though a man labor to seek it out, yet he shall not find it. Yes, farther, though a wise man think to know it, yet shall he not be able to find it." So initially what he's talking about in this section of verses, he's speaking of someone who has passed away and they are doing their funeral service. And basically the way he describes this person is they were hypocritical, right? He talks about how really they were wicked, but they pretended. They came to the city, they pretended to be godly, they pretended to be all these things. And so during their death, people were praising them and speaking so highly of them because of who they pretended to be. And, one of the things that I thought about here, it's always hard. I mean, going to a funeral is difficult anyway. We know this. There's never a time when being at a funeral is an easy event. But I feel there's three different kinds of funerals. We have funerals for people who we know they were sold out godly people. We have no doubt in our mind where that person is, right? And these funerals are so much easier because even though you're there and you're in sorrow from losing this person, there's also rejoicing because you know that this person is now made whole and this person is with their Father. But then you have those funerals where you know that the person was wicked. You know that the person never claimed to know the Lord. These funerals are incredibly difficult. And I've had conversations several times with people who have tried to preside over these funerals, and they say it's so difficult because you don't really know what to say, and all you can really do is stand up there and beg the family, to come to know the Lord before it's too late. But the kind of funeral he's speaking of here is that third kind. That kind where you have that person that they claim to know the Lord. Maybe oftentimes they participated in different church activities and things like that. They kind of went through the motions, but nothing about their life really said that they were saved. They were kind of living a double life. And that's kind of what King Solomon is talking about here. And the point that he's making is that it's our tendency to get angry about these people who live this double life. They live both sides, right? And he's saying, people could get angry that during this person's funeral, during this person's burial, there are people who are talking about how wonderful this person was, and they're speaking so highly of them, when really there were some people who knew the truth. And he's talking about how our human nature wants to see that person punished. We want to see them receive the kind of feedback that they deserve, right? Like, we want to see people saying, hey, this person was fake. This person acted one way here and acted one way there. Our human nature and our flesh, we want to see that instant thing, but it doesn't always happen. And, as he always mentions, we don't always see the end result here under the sun. We talk about how, and it's Romans 14:12, that reminds us everybody will stand before God, right? There's no man alive who at some point won't stand before God. And so the point he's trying to make here is that while we may be here on earth and we may see these people who live this double life and who have people fooled, and it's sometimes a huge struggle for us. And so many of us have been through this. I have been through it myself. Just a few years ago, I remember attending a funeral, and it was incredibly difficult for me. It was a massive funeral. It was standing room only. They had to have people standing outside, and started bringing people in shifts. And the funeral was for an unbelievably wicked person. But this person had done an incredible job of fooling people. And I remember standing there and just hundreds and hundreds of people poured in, and they kept talking about how wonderful this person was and how much this person loved the Lord and how much this person did for the church and how talented this person was and how giving this person was. And I remember that, standing at that funeral thinking, these people don't know, this isn't right. And deep down inside of me, I just wanted to scream. Standing in the middle of this funeral home, I just wanted to say, you guys have no idea. You've been fooled. You don't know what you're saying. This isn't real. This person was wicked. This person was evil. This person, found joy in bringing pain to other people. And I just stood there and watched these people cry and talk about just how incredibly wonderful and godly and smart this person was. And it was something that it actually took me a little bit of time to come to grips with and to make peace with, that it didn't matter how angry I was, and it didn't really matter what these people thought. They could think anything. What mattered was what happened when that person stood before God. Ultimately, that was the only part of it that was important. It had nothing to do with what everybody thought or what I thought or me seeing justice. None of that mattered. What mattered was that moment when that person stood before God and they were judged for what they did and who they were. And this is the point he's making here, the same point that Paul made in Romans. We all stand before him. Everybody at some point is going to get what they deserve. Everybody is going to be judged for what they have done. And we can't let it get to us when we don't see it happen instantly down here. We have to accept that sometimes, it's going to be after that person's death, and we won't know anything about what happened between them and the Lord. So then as we're going to move down a little bit, verse 15, he starts talking about, back this same thing. And again, the author here brings up, Paul, speaking in Romans about us, not always feeling that things that are done in front of us are fair. And I love this because I feel like that goes right back to this thing that we say all the time, especially what we say to our kids, right? Life's not fair. But it goes right along with this whole thing of we want to see it here. We want that instant gratification. When someone hurts us, we want to see that instant punishment. But again, Solomon just continues to remind us that that person's punishment is coming whether we see it or not. What we get to see and us feeling vindicated for what that person did, that's not what's important. What ultimately matters is what happens between that person and God. So again, so we're now going to move into chapter 9. And here Solomon is getting into a conversation about the just and the unjust. And so I'm going to start out reading verses 1 through 6 in chapter 9. It says, "For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knows either love or hatred by all that is before him. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean and to the unclean, to him who sacrifices and to him who sacrifices not. As is the good, so is the sinner, and he who swears as he who fears an oath. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. Yes, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live, and after that they go to the dead. For to him who is joined to all the living there is hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also their love and their hatred and their envy is now perished. Neither have they any more a portion forever in anything that is done under the sun." So here, he's actually talking about something interesting. He's speaking of the godly and the ungodly. And he says, ultimately, the same thing is going to happen to them both, right? He says they are both going to have suffering. They are both going to have times of joy. But ultimately, both the godly and the ungodly, both the just and the unjust, are going to perish. They're going to die. They're going to stand before God and be judged for what they did. But specifically in verses 4 through 6, this is what I'm going to kind of focus on here. He makes a really interesting comparison. He says it's better to be a living dog than a dead lion. And basically his point here, back in this day, dogs were not what they are now, okay? During Bible times, a lot of times we see, I know there's even the story, I believe it's about the Good Samaritan, about the dog, sitting outside the city licking his wounds. But during these times, dogs were considered dirty. They were hated. People didn't own them. They were gross. They were lowly. They're not what we have now, where we have, in our case, 5 dogs living in our house, and everybody has color coordinated outfits, and they sit at the dinner table with us. And, it's not the same. We can, for me, it's hard to imagine that it ever could have been any different. But during this time, that's what they were. They were considered so lowly. But the point that Solomon is making here is that life is important. That as long as you're alive, and I love the way the author of the study puts it. She says, as long as you're alive, there's always a chance for redemption. There's a chance to find salvation. Once you're dead, that's gone. All the bad things are gone. All of the good things are gone. Any chance you have to do anything disappears once you die. And so, while a lion is considered this mighty and powerful animal, if it's dead, it's no good to anybody. There's nothing that lion can do, which is why he says it's better to be a living dog, even though it's considered lowly. It has a chance to become something more. So then as we move into verses 7 and 9, I like this part. He's reminding us that because whether we are in this category of godly people or this category of ungodly people, whether we're just or whether we're unjust, because we know that ultimately we will all meet the same end, right? Ultimately, we will all die. Our bodies will return to dust at some point. And he's saying because it's important that we learn to live our lives remembering that. And we've already brought this up in several chapters before. He's reminding us again, enjoy it. Enjoy what you do. Work hard, but then enjoy the fruits of your labor. Enjoy your life. And the author even makes a point. She's like, she pulled it from these verses. She said, enjoy your family. Enjoy your dinner time with your family. Enjoy that, that you worked and you made money, and so that you were able to provide this food for your family, and you're able to sit down and enjoy time as a family, because that's an important thing in your life. You know, as you grow older, those memories of sitting around a dinner table with your children, that's something that you're going to miss. I know in our house, it's one of my favorite times. We can't do it every night, but we seem to have gotten into a pretty good habit, even though sometimes we have to change dinner time around, of sitting down as a family, and, you know, we laugh and we talk, and the dogs are jumping up, driving everybody crazy and stealing people's plates if they walk off to get some, you know, and things like this. And it's a wonderful time. And I love that the author brings that up. She says, you know, enjoy family meals, enjoy your marriage, enjoy your time with your kids. We're supposed to enjoy these things, and there's nothing wrong with us enjoying these things. And here, you know, King Solomon is reminding us, you know, it's okay that you work for it, but enjoy what you're working for. Don't make your entire life about work and just getting through it. Take time to enjoy what it is that you're doing. And then, so we're going to get into verses 10 to 12 now. Let me pull this up really quick. So verses 10 to 12, it says, "Whatsoever your hands find to do, do with your might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave where you go. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happens to them all. For man also knows not his time, as the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare. So are the sons of men snared in an evil time when it falls suddenly upon them." So here, Solomon is reminding us, he says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your strength. And again, the author pulls in another comparison to Paul, because of course we know in Colossians, Paul says, whatever your hands find to do, whatever work you do, whatever it is, whatever task it is that's before you, do it heartily as unto the Lord. And so I love these constant comparisons that she makes between King Solomon and Paul, because so often they just fit right together. So Solomon here is saying, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever kind of job it is that you have, even jobs that, you know, that you might feel is just so meaningless, and it's just not what you thought you'd be doing. It doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel like you're making a difference. He's saying still, it's so important to do it to the best of your ability, because you're doing it for the Lord. And then as we move down, Solomon starts talking about the unpredictability of life. And this is why he makes such a big deal about us enjoying our time, because we don't know when our days are over. And I love it. He uses the comparison about a fish caught in a net, right? You know, that these fish, 1 second they're swimming, and the next second, that's it. They're in a net, they're in a boat, and that's it for them. And that's how he compares that's what he compares our lives to, that in a split second it can be over. We have no idea when it's going to come to an end. And there's so much evil in the world, and he made that point. There's so much wickedness in the world that at any time there's anything that could bring our lives to an end. And because of that, we should be living our lives as though we understand that they could come to an end at any moment, and we should be making the best and making the most out of every moment that we have here. And then, of course, he finishes chapter 9 with a story about a wise man. I'm actually going to read it really quick. 13 through 18, it says, "This wisdom have I seen also under the sun, and it seemed great unto me. There was a little city and a few men within it, and there came a great king against it, and besieged it, and built great bulwarks against it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city, yet no man remembered that same poor man. Then said I, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. The words of wise men are heard in quiet, more than the cry of him who rules among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good." So here he tells this story, and we've seen this, I think, last week or the week before, where every now and then he kind of gives us these little short stories. But here he's talking about a powerful king who came in and attacked a city. And the city should have fallen to it. And he doesn't actually tell us how, but he says that there was a poor wise man somewhere within the city. And we don't even know what the poor wise man did, but somehow he was single-handedly responsible for saving the city from this attack against this powerful king. And he says the problem was, after the attack was over, nobody cared. Everybody instantly forgot all about him. But what he took from it was that wisdom was greater than strength. Because even though this king was powerful and he had strength and he had men and he had armies, it was a wise person who ultimately ended up winning that battle. So here he's saying, it doesn't matter if you get, this goes right back to, it doesn't matter if you get recognition for what you do, for your walk with God, for the level of wisdom that you have. It doesn't matter, because ultimately the wise person is going to triumph over the person who is trying to do things in their own strength. So now we are going to very quickly get into the first few verses of chapter 10. And what we see in chapter 10 is a comparison of wisdom and folly. And of course, we know folly is basically just another word for foolishness. But as we get into verse 10, I'm going to read the first verse. It says, "Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So does a little folly him who is in reputation for wisdom and honor." So, unfortunately, this hits home a little hard right now. We've all seen this, right? People who have great ministries, people who are on fire for God, people who are truly making an impact for the kingdom. They're genuinely wise people, but they let that one bit of foolishness in. And, Solomon compares it to dead flies causing an ointment to stink. The ointment can be pure and expensive, but if one dead fly gets in it, it changes the smell and it ruins the whole thing. And this is the comparison he's making to us living lives of wisdom and living our lives for the Lord, but letting that one mistake get in and take over and cause us to fall, and how it affects our entire testimony. And when I read this, of course, with everything we see going on in the news right now, the first place that my mind went was Ravi Zacharias. He was always known as an incredible man of God. He had an incredible ministry. And unfortunately, now what everybody is remembering is, hey, he had this other thing going on, right? He had a problem with women. It's looking like there's a possibility that, he was doing this and he was doing this. And now it's so sad because people are no longer talking about the incredible godly man that he was and what he did for the world and the impact of his ministry. His ministry and his reputation were tainted by this one thing that he let in, and it no doubt grew and grew and grew. And this is exactly what Solomon is warning us against here. So I'm going to quickly read 2 through 7, and we will wrap this up here. It says, "A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart at his left. Yes, also, when he who is a fool walks by the way, his wisdom fails him, and he says to everyone that he is a fool. If the spirit of the ruler rise up against you, leave not your place, for yielding pacifies great offenses. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, as an error which proceeds from the ruler. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. I have seen servants upon horses, and princes walking as servants upon the earth. He who digs a pit shall fall into it, and whoso breaks a hedge, a serpent shall bite him. Whoso removes stones shall be hurt therewith, and he who cleaves wood shall be endangered thereby. If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength, but wisdom is profitable to direct." So basically, what he's talking about here, he's giving advice again, just as he did a couple chapters ago. He's again giving advice for us dealing with those that are in authority over us, who may not have our best interest at heart, who may not, rule fairly or whatever. He's saying, here he says, leave not your place. So basically this is him saying, again, don't get angry and walk away. Don't get angry and lose your temper. Don't get angry and lose your job because your boss is doing something unfair, or your boss is not treating you correctly. Basically the point he's making here is that that when you're working, use wisdom. It doesn't matter if it's a job that has nothing to do with the church. That godly wisdom can always be applied. And then as we kind of come to the end of it, we see that he's actually even bringing up specific types of work, even physical labor, which is what he brings up. He says, no matter what job it is that you're doing, use that wisdom that God gives you. Apply that to everything that you do, including your jobs. He's saying, keep yourself safe. Use your brain. Work smart. You're supposed to be working for God anyway, which means you're supposed to be doing it to the best of your ability. So that's why he makes this point here. Regardless of what it is that you're doing at work, apply that wisdom that God has given you. So basically, just wrapping all this up, we see there's been a lot of back and forth. There's been a lot of repeating of the same things. But what we can really take from this lesson is that the biggest point he's making here is that regardless of what it is that we're doing, regardless of where it is that we are, no matter our chosen profession, our jobs, we have the chance to exhibit that godly wisdom and to hold tight to our godly testimony in everyday life, whether we're at home, whether we're at school, whether we're on the job and dealing with, people in authority who do not know and love the Lord and don't care about governing fairly and ruling fairly. We as Christians have the chance to live out that testimony and to apply the wisdom that God has given us to every aspect, including every aspect of our jobs. And as Christians, we are called to do that. So that is it for this lesson. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know, like I said, I've really enjoyed this. I hate that next week is the last week of it, but I hope that y'all are really truly getting something out of this. We're so glad that you guys decided to be with us tonight, and we will see you next time.